All right, welcome back to another episode of Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics. My name is Troy, aka Keep Troy Blue. With me, as always, is Kathy Cannon, aka Cannon's Fodder. We have the presidential historian poll come out this week. The Presidential Greatness Project Expert Survey conducted from November 15th to December 31st, 2023. 525 respondents invited to participate. And Kathy, Donald John Trump is dead last. Donald Trump comes in 45th of 45 presidents. So just, yeah, absolutely embarrassing for him. He was like 41 or 42 on the last one,
He's gonna
just
lose
right
his
out of
mind.
office. He has fallen to dead last. He is beat by the.
He's beat by everyone if he's dead last, Troy. I
Oh,
mean,
I know, but just he's beat by Franklin Pierce, who was drunk his entire presidency. Andrew Johnson, who was the first president impeached and probably committed treason, and James Buchanan, who also committed treason, who was sped up the course of the Civil War. So he's
noticing
in
a
good
trend.
company.
I was gonna say I'm noticing a
Yeah,
trend with that little summation you gave there.
yeah.
But here's how stupid I am. I was like, oh, I missed the presidential poll. I wonder why they did this now. And then I realized it's President's Day and I'm an idiot. So
It is
that
President's Day. Yes,
it
that would
is
be the reason.
President's Day. So I'm
Yeah.
stupid and it's adorable. But I just was just looking at this list and it was amazing because I'm a nerd, as we all know. And especially about
The
like
hell you say?
obscure I know, especially about like obscure presidents and
Yeah.
um I love the from 30 down on the list. It's James Garfield, which is fucking hilarious. Who's up actually in the rankings, which a conversation for a different day.
Up
But
five. Like
he's
what did
up
they figure out about
5,
Garfield?
right? That he
Yeah,
wasn't as bad as these motherfuckers, right?
I
Like that's
guess.
what it looks like.
So
And it
31 to the bottom is really the garbage presidents, I guess.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
31 is the guy who died from pneumonia after his inaugural speech,
William
which
Henry Harrison, which
cool.
again I don't understand how you put him. I don't understand how he's ranked. Like he died in like a month. What do they have? He did literally nothing as president. He should just be
I
like an
know.
asterisk.
Well, that's why everybody under him is fucking hilarious, right? Like, you're worse than the guy that died a month in. And that list starts with George W. Bush, which is so validating to the 22-year-old
Yeah.
version of me, that got called a terrorist sympathizer over and over again. He beats out Chester Arthur, though, which I'm guessing 9 out of 10 Americans couldn't tell you was ever president. So cool. Uh, that 34, 35, 36, Coolidge, Nixon, Hoover. So there's a theme.
I'm glad we're finally recognizing what an ass president Calvin Coolidge was, because he was ranked he was always considered like one of the better presidents because the 20s were so like economically
I know
successful,
it.
but like he did literally nothing, and he couldn't form a coherent sentence. He was yeah, he was a terrible Coolidge was a terrible president.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
glad we're finally
arguably it
realizing
was
that.
yeah, it was his policies. Like Hoover got all the blame for it, but it was
Right.
Coolidge's policies that like brought about
Oh
the
yeah.
depression.
Oh yeah.
Um, Hoover was just like there to be the guy like it's okay, it'll self-correct. Economies self-correct in the long run, and we're all like, but we're starving.
Right.
Enter John Maynard Keynes, but conversation for another day, right? So then under that, I got Nixon, Hoover, and then Tyler, and that's just a fun little bit. Oh, I got
John
Hoover
Tyler.
already. So then Fillmore, Harding, and Harrison. Actually, wait, which Harrison is which at this point?
Oh yeah, a good
Oh
point. There's
yeah.
two Benjamin Harrison or William Henry Harrison.
Oh, now I don't know which one's funny. Like I wanted George W. to be behind the guy that died
Well,
so bad.
it
Oh
doesn't
well.
specify, so we'll just go ahead and say that
I know
31 is
for
the
my
dead guy.
soul. That is what
That
I
George
need.
W. Bush is losing to the dead guy.
Yeah. The bottom 4, though, actually, you know what? It's probably the other way around. The 41 is probably William Henry Harrison because when you look at the bottom 5, right? Or bottom 4, I guess. No. Harrison, Pierce, Johnson, Buchanan, and Trump. That makes sense as a bottom 5, you know?
Well, Pierce, Johnson, and Buchanan are always at the bottom.
Yeah, because they're all
And
drunk and almost broke the
Harrison,
country.
I guess, yeah, it makes sense to like dying a month into your presidency just saves you from being from being better than the treasonous drunks.
Yeah, like,
Uh,
and that's this thing. The bottom of the list are all you very much almost ended the union in one way or another, and
and
at
then
least there's
Trump dead last
consistency.
at 45.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Another amazing thing is that Obama jumped up to number 7. I think he was at like 16 or 17 before. He's in the top 10, baby. Barack Obama is at number 7, beating out Eisenhower and
That's
LBJ
actually
and
impressive.
Kennedy, rounding out the
Kennedy
rest of
doesn't
the.
surprise me, but Eisenhower surprises me.
Yeah, he beats out Eisenhower.
Hmm.
Uh, we have Reagan at 16. Reagan is falling down 7.
Love it.
Reagan has
Love
always
it.
historically been in the top 10 of this poll. And like
I
I
know,
was
and it's
saying,
driven me crazy.
I was saying in the pre-show that like Reagan gets a lot of pass just because of his, the splendor of his presidency or whatever, the great communicator. I think finally historians are finally recognizing that he was a terrible president.
That
Like,
after 40 years, every economic problem in the country traces back directly
yeah,
to his policies. So maybe we shouldn't brag about him so much because we look dumb.
it took 40 years for people to realize what a terrible president Ronald Reagan was.
Better late to the
He's beat
party than
by
missing it
Wilson.
altogether, right?
And then Clinton's in at 12. Clinton's climbing a little bit.
That's
And then what
actually, that
was
shouldn't be surprising. Remember, budget surpluses paying down the debt. While we're yelling about deficits and all of that stuff, he's going to look nostalgic.
so the top 10 is Lincoln, FDR, Washington. Washington down. It's usually Washington's either 1 or 2. He's down to 3. Teddy Roosevelt at 4. Jefferson at 5, which I know Kathy is not happy about.
I would switch probably Obama and Jefferson, I think. And I'm guessing they give Jefferson his due or his spot, Declaration of Independence, which he did not do as president for the
Again,
record.
like pre-presidential stuff should not count in this. You
I
know what I mean?
know.
Like his presidency wasn't that great, to be honest with you. So
Correct. I mean,
yeah,
he bought Louisiana from Napoleon, but arguably he just helped Napoleon lay waste to Europe, and that wasn't exactly
yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
So
After basing his entire political philosophy and political party and this idea that we're going to ramp down the federal government, we're going to ramp down everything that the Federalists did, he doubled the size of the
and he
country
doubled the
by
size of the country.
using the federal government to double the size of the country. So,
You gotta love the irony. America is nothing if not irony, right? The land of the free, founded by slaves. The no taxation without representation, whose capital has no representation, right? Like, nothing if not ironic.
so
Nothing if
Truman
not
at
ironic.
6. I don't think Truman should be at 6. I don't
I
think
don't think
Truman should
Truman
be in
should
the
be at
top 10.
6.
And then Obama at 7.
I feel
So
like
it's interesting.
Eisenhower should
You'd put
beat out
Obama at
Truman.
5, huh? That's pretty high for Obama. I
Well,
mean,
I just,
I think Obama's a great president, but
truthfully, I just
yeah.
really wanted to move Jefferson down. Actually, looking at it, I would probably switch Obama and Eisenhower at the very
Okay.
least. Actually, no, I'd put Eisenhower where Jefferson is. I'd
Okay.
put Jefferson where LBJ is, and I'd probably just bump Obama the 1 into 6.
I think Eisenhower is objectively a better president than Jefferson. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and
Um,
objectively better than Obama because what? Well,
you think
actually,
Eisenhower's
no,
better than Obama?
no. Actually, come to think of it, they had the same kind of fatal flaw, if you will, because the biggest criticism of Obama's presidency that I can give is that he didn't really build the party,
Okay.
and that kind of left us vulnerable to. There's the talk that he cut the deal with Clinton back in '08, blah, 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 all that crap. And I don't know how true it is. Like, I'm sure there's something to it, but like, was it I'm going to stay out of this entirely forever? I don't know how serious that all is. But the Democratic Party didn't follow Obama's lead ideologically like it should have.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very progressive president. He had to lead from the center just because of where the country was ideologically, but he should have walked the party further to the left than he did.
Mm-hmm.
And had he done that, Bernie Sanders would have been the more obvious choice in 16. And we all know I'll die on the hill that he'd have beaten Donald Trump in 16 anyway. In 20, probably not. But in 2016, like over Hillary, all the way, I'll die on that hill. But Eisenhower, arguably the same problem is he kind of lost control of his party. Remember his farewell address is please, please, please stop with the military industrial push. Please, please stop. Like it'll kill.
It's a little
our
too
party.
late. It's a little too late for that, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's kind of what I mean. So
that
Obama
guy
and
thrived on the
Eisenhower,
military-industrial complex. And then he's like, "Oh, don't take it. Don't do what I did, though."
Perhaps I've gone too far. Perhaps, yeah, and that's why I think the two of them both. And looking at their rankings, 73.8, 73.73, like that's like I feel like those two are going to be married to each other in that wherever they land for a long time because they were both successful in similar ways, but both like changed their parties fundamentally.
Yeah.
Like their presidencies shifted their parties, and neither party came away better yet.
Okay.
I think there's still hope for the Democrats if, they remove their heads from their asses, but you know,
Yeah.
you live here. You know.
Uh, that's got to sting in MAGA world. Although I don't know how much they care. I think
No,
they've
they're gonna say it's
always.
the New York Times, it's rigged, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
They're
but to
gonna say it.
have Obama in the top 10 while
Mm-hmm.
Trump is dead last, and dead last, like again,
Dead
that bottom
last.
five is so atrocious.
Yeah, I know.
To have Trump at dead last in that with that company, he was like
Mm-hmm.
fourth from the bottom last time,
Yep.
which kind of made sense, I guess. But putting him at dead last is such a such a
Mm-hmm.
disgrace.
I love
The
that the
worst
Roosevelts
president
can.
ever.
Yeah. I love that the Roosevelts consistently stay so high. I love that Franklin always beats out Teddy, even though I kind of like Teddy better, which is weird. But also, what's
I like
really
him too, but
funny.
I think objectively FDR was a better president.
Yeah, probably. But Teddy was so cute. And he was a sickly little kid that got made fun of for asthma who went on to be like a rock star. So maybe there's a little bit of that.
Well, his story was
Yeah.
pretty. We should do a whole Teddy Roosevelt deep dive.
Oh,
His story was pretty
dude,
fascinating.
don't do it. Oh, I have a funny story about how I remember when I had an allergic reaction on the plane. This can be for patrons because this will make people pay $5. I have to tell you the story about how I was chatting about Teddy Roosevelt with a Columbia professor before going into anaphylactic shock on an airplane. That's
Okay.
for the paid subscribers, though.
Teddy Roosevelt shot in the chest during
I
a
know.
campaign speech.
Kept fucking going.
Finished the speech before
I
going to the
know.
hospital. Oh
But the
boy.
point I was going to make there is if you look at this, like 1, 2, and 3 is like 93.8, 90.8, 90.3. And then Teddy in fourth place, it's a drop to 78, which is
Okay.
like really interesting if you think about it. The top three are so solidly, there. Lincoln, I wonder if he'll ever fall out of the first place
I
ranking.
don't think he'll ever fall out. I
Yeah.
think it'd be.
Save the Union and all that, I guess.
I don't know that you'd ever get. I mean, maybe two if he's losing
Yeah.
to Washington, I guess, or
Maybe.
maybe
But
even
yeah,
FDR.
but those top
But
three always are somewhere. It's always Lincoln, and then, like you said, Washington or FDR kind of go back and forth. It's just really funny to me how there's such like such a jump from third to fourth place, and then how like consistently it kind of steadily progresses from there because it's 78, 77, 75, 73, 73, 72, 68, right? But because that's the biggest jump downward.
yeah.
Um, so it's
Biden
interesting to
enters the
me.
chat at 14, somewhat symbolic because this poll does not officially rank presidents until they're out of office, because it ranks their entire body of work, their entire presidency. Biden isn't done yet, so we can't really rank his presidency yet. But entering at 14 is a pretty solid number, for a current president.
That's
I don't
quite
even
a
think
solid
Obama was that
ranking.
high when he entered. I think he was like in the 20s when he entered.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at the numbers, he's like tied perfectly. Like he's 62.66 and John Adams is 62.66. So Biden is tied with John Adams.
John
And
Adams is too high on that list too.
that's funny
Um,
though, isn't it though? It's funny.
I wonder how, in Russia, Vladimir Putin is consistently ranked their best president of all time.
That's so
Uh,
shocking. I would have never guessed that, Mr. I kill my opponents. Who would ever question him?
Vladimir Putin, only the second president of the or I guess was Medvedev. No, Medvedev was never president. So yeah, it's been Boris Yeltsin and Vladimir Putin. They've only ever had two presidents of the Russian
Woof.
Federation.
Woof, right? Like when
Both
that's
of
your
those are,
fucking
so yeah, pretty fucking bad. Navalny, Alexei Navalny, pro-democracy opposition leader, opposition to Vladimir Putin, dies in a prison camp. They call it a penal colony, but I can't say penal colony with a straight face. It was a prison camp, concentration camp. From the Russian, from the official Russian statement is, quote, on February 16th, 2024, in correctional colony number 3. And this is in like the North Pole, by the way. This is one of these like Siberian prison camps where they're like just in the Arctic
prison, right? Like
Yeah,
they literally
yeah.
an Arctic prison sounds so fun.
Jesus. In correctional colony number 3, convict A.A. Navalny felt unwell after a walk, almost immediately losing consciousness. The institution's medical workers immediately arrived. An emergency medical team was called. All necessary resuscitation measures were carried out, but they did not yield positive results. Emergency medical doctors confirmed the death of the convict, end quote. His body's missing, by the way. They've
shocking.
they can't find the body, so no one's going to be able to do like a proper autopsy. Was seen healthy and joking around on camera the day before he died. Was seen laughing and joking with a judge. I guess he had like a little mini hearing the day before he died. So not displaying any symptoms of feeling unwell or any sort of medical issues the day before. Is there any way, Kathy, that this was not Putin, that this was not an assassination of Putin's political rival?
No,
anyway.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. It's 100% what it was.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent. I actually don't know if you'll remember this because it was a few years ago, a long time. Hanging on, because the pandemic's blurred everything together. 2018. How long ago was that? 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Shit. But it was in England. There was a guy and his daughter, Sergei and Yulia. I can never say the last name properly, so if I say it wrong, forgive me. Skripal or Skripal, whatever however you would say it in Russian. But they were found poisoned and just sitting on a bench in Salisbury, England. And I think he died and his daughter survived, or maybe the other way around. I can never really remember. But it was thought to be Russian poisoning because he was on like some list that Putin had. And I figure it's probably the same way because it was a similar way that they described it. Like they were seen out around town earlier that day. It was totally fine. And then all of a sudden fell ill and died on a fucking bench, right? So
poison seems to be Putin's preferred.
He's as the Game of Thrones would say, it's a woman's weapon.
Yeah, Peter Baelish. Yeah, poison's a woman's weapon.
Poison's a woman's weapon, Vlad. Where's the defenstration like your ancestors rely on?
He's
not blowing out of windows anymore. I know.
Defense. I love that there's a word for throwing somebody out of a window, for yeeting somebody through a window is defenstration.
Because Russians did it so often, they're like, we need a word.
We need a word for it. Mourners
and
arrested.
It's a rad word, to be fair. It's a rad.
It is a rad word, and it doesn't portray what it means at all. Like if you were defenstration, I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? It means eating somebody out a window.
On the lesson plan, and like the kids would walk in, and it would just be like the defenstration of Prague, which is like a big thing in European history. They'd be like, "What is that?" I'm like, "You have a computer?" They'd look it up. They'd be like, "Miss." I'm like, "Yeah."
We're just gonna start casually working it into conversation and see if people know what I mean. Mourners arrested, not technically protesters because they weren't technically protesting. They were just mourning the loss. By the way, worldwide global outrage to this kind of revived the anti-Putin sentiment. But mourners arrested. This is badass, Kathy. They were laying flowers at the monuments of those killed in Soviet gulags in St. Petersburg and Moscow and others. These mourners went to they have these like memorial monuments to Soviet political oppression, ironically. You have these mourners
statues, you know what it is?
They have mourners laying flowers at those statues. So it's not technically, all they're doing is laying flowers at a statue, but it's a statue to people who have been killed in prison during the Soviet Union. So it's pretty badass, but the cops were onto it immediately. They all were arrested. Multiple arrests in St. Petersburg and Moscow and other places, reviving anti-Putin sentiment all over the world. People are pissed about this. There's meetings happening in the EU, etc. So so just really, really bad. The day before Navalny died, Putin said that he was asked who he wanted to be president of the US, Trump or Biden, and he said Biden. The day before he executed his chief rival, he said that he basically endorsed President Biden. So read into that what you want. It reminds me a lot of the trolls on TikTok that'll say say some like patently pro-Trump thing and then be like, oh, by the way, I'm a Democrat. So they go, yeah, sure, buddy.
We believe you too.
Yeah. But so now MAGA is suddenly anti-Russia. It's a huge friggin' turnaround, saying Navalny wouldn't have been killed under Trump, even though the first assassination attempt of Navalny was under Trump, but he survived.
And he literally 3 days ago said he'd let Putin do whatever he wanted, which I imagine would include killing prisoners in his own country, don't you think? Fucking hell, guys.
So the week that Donald Trump says that he would basically let Putin do, quote, whatever the hell he wanted.
He kills a political rival. Yeah, so that's convenient, Fucking hell.
So again, revive worldwide anti-Russia sentiment, which is a kind of actually terrible timing for Putin because support for Ukraine is waning in the United States and other places. Their military is weakening. Russia is back on the offensive. Ukraine had to surrender and move backward for the first time in a year this week. They surrendered ground. Volodymyr Zelensky says that his military will not hold out the year unless he gets aid from the U.S., which is currently stalled in Congress. So, yeah. MAGA Mike Johnson, the speaker, holding up, not even considering a supplemental aid package in Congress that includes $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, and I don't know, some money for Taiwan as well, like $10 billion for Taiwan.
Yeah,
so
China will slow their fucking roll.
Will this help shake Republicans on the Ukraine aid or nah?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this one, actually, because you know how Republicans, for all of their weird pro-Putin things now, are still very much like anti-communism. And this is going to seem like a weird connection because Putin's not a communist. I want to be very, very clear on that. But part of the message during the Cold War was that the Soviets were these evil spies that will infiltrate and assassinate leaders all over the world, right? Like that was kind of the vibe. That was the fear of the Russian spy assassinating people. And he probably just renewed that like latent fear in the mind of a lot of people who had been like, oh no, Russia's not bad anymore, really, because they're doing the thing that they were scary for doing your entire life. And that's probably not going to help. So, and it just kind of it puts a bunch of smaller pieces together if you kind of look at them in order, right? So Donald Trump says, I'll let him do whatever he wants. So he kills a political rival. The same week that Tucker Carlson is over there trying to sell everybody, and I know this is later in the outline, but right, like the same time he's got like apparently Russian agents within the United States pushing propaganda messages to how much better his country is. At the same time, Ukraine has had to like, roll back some of their military because they're losing ground. At the same time, Republicans are killing aid bills. It starts to like, when you look at all of the pieces lined up in a row like that, it starts to look a lot more organized than happenstance. And
it looks incredibly organized. You also had Tommy Tuberville saying that the Russian invasion was the U.S.'s fault this week. He also,
he also sold off a whole bunch of stock, which is concerning. But
I guarantee,
conversation for another day.
We've said this before. There's no way that some of these people are not at least Russian assets. I mean, at least whether they know it or not. I mean, at least on the list of assets in the United States.
Happy idiots there to help without realizing they're helping. And Tuberville is definitely stupid enough to be unwittingly helping or Russians. See, they're so bad that I keep, Freudian calling them Soviets again.
The other news was this week. It was a sort of a mini national security panic for kind of no reason. There was no immediate danger, but it came out that the Russians have war and space capability. They have the capability to detonate a nuclear weapon in space, wipe out satellite communications for the entire world. So that's interesting. But now we know that they have that. Now Space Force comes into play in the United States. So we need that. We need that Space Force.
To that, I will say, one, we've had that technology for a long time. We just haven't told anybody. Be real, right? Like, if you think we don't, you're ridiculous. Two, they've probably had that for some time. And if you think they didn't, then you're a little bit naive. And this is why you don't want Donald Trump to be president, because there is an existing treaty. And this is actually why Space Force made this happen, actually, come to think of it. This just popped into my head, so I might have to fact check myself, and I want to disclaimer it. But there was a treaty to keep space, unmilitarized, and Donald Trump a little bit violated that with Space Force, which would allow the Russians to flex their bullshit here. And there's also, the missing documents. So you know what? A lot of things could just start to become really clear, and I'm starting to scare myself. So
the Russians and the Chinese have already kind of militarized space for sure. We don't even know what the fucking Chinese are up to in space.
Yeah, and to be fair, we have too. We were just like, wink, wink, we're not going to do that, haha. But we have the capabilities all along. So if you try it, we'll blow you up. But that's my point, is that that's the next war. Like, we keep thinking about like World War III and are we going to get drafted and all this. Like, that's not how that war is going to play out. And the whole Donald Trump saying there's an ocean between us and Russia if they invade Europe, that's not the way the war is going to go. Like, it is, but it's not. Like, they're going to come after our networks. They're going to leave us incapable of, operating our machinery. Like, our military equipment is very much dependent on satellite communications. You defeat us very quickly if you blow up our satellites, which is why that's concerning. But that's not like a new realization. I've been like saying that since undergrad because my professor has told us that in undergrad, and that was 20 years ago. Ouch, that hurt to say out loud.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the Chinese and the North Koreans, that's all they do is hacking. The Russians are much more into like psyop, social media fuckery.
You know who's like a little bit quiet on this front, and this is just me, postulating. I wonder what the Japanese capabilities on hacking are.
Japanese hackers?
Yeah, because you don't really hear about that, right?
I don't
you would
know that,
think.
I don't know that the Japanese are doing too much other than just sort of
what if they are and we just
chilling in their own sphere?
Remember, like they're only allowed to have defensive military because we wrote their constitution and that's the rule. We're their, essentially we're their military. But like they gear shifted all of their military resources essentially to technological development, if you remember in the years following the war, hence Nintendo and all that crap, right? But it would seem silly to think that they haven't explored those elements like
what,
hacking,
space war?
No, not space war,
space
but
lasers?
like cyber networking and cyber security and cyber communications. They've been pioneers in that field for a long time. I can't imagine they don't have those capabilities.
Yeah. It's scary. It's a scary world. So Trump announcing this week, again, doubling down this week. Are you dying? Are you okay? He's like hacking up a log off camera. Trump doubling down this week on his NATO comments, not defending NATO. Got a lot of heat for that the first time, saying that he would not honor the NATO treaty, first president ever to do that, saying that he will not protect NATO members who are delinquent in their bills, which is again not how NATO works at all. NATO does not issue bills, so you can't be delinquent. NATO nations are encouraged to spend a certain amount on their own defense. So some nations do not spend the suggested amount of 2% of GDP on their own defense. So Trump's been on grievance politics on that for a while, even while he was president, stoking grievance of NATO, again, probably at the bidding of Vladimir Putin. But he's managed to convince his followers that like the United States is footing the bill for NATO, and like these people are not paying us back, which is not how that works at all. So once again, in this sphere of it's all Russia all the time this week, because we had a lot of news come out about Russia this week. In this sphere of Russian psyop bullshit, we have again the leading presidential candidate saying he's not going to honor NATO. Okay, we're back. Kathy almost died.
I had to die a little bit. I'm sorry.
Not dying a little inside. Kathy almost actually died there.
But my little secret, my inhalers are my boyfriend. Taylor Swift can keep karma.
Yeah.
I have albuterol. Albuterol's my boyfriend.
That's the good shit.
Dude, that was bad. I'm sorry I scared you.
You scared me. That was really scary. I'm glad you're okay. I've never experienced a Kathy asthma attack before.
Yeah. My classes have. Like, I tell them it all at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, look, here's just the deal. I have really bad asthma, and if I have an asthma attack, you don't have to care, but please call somebody who will, because I'll die. And they never believe me, but then eventually I will have the asthma attack in class, and they're like, Miss, that was so scary. I'm like, I warned you, David. It wasn't a for funsies disclaimer.
Yeah.
It was a real one. So, sorry I scared you, Troy. I'm back. I'm alive.
That's okay. You're still alive. That's good. Although if you died on the show, that your commitment to Just Buy Less Coffee would be legendary.
I want a statue built into me. Cannon's fodder dies.
Yeah, the Cannon's fodder memorial in Moscow. Speaking of
right outside the gulags, right outside.
So we're talking about like Russian psyops and shit. You gotta you gotta.
It was Putin. He was trying to kill me. That was what it is.
Yeah, Putin was trying to kill you for the segment. We were just trashing Putin
for legal purposes. That is a joke.
He's a loyal listener of the show. He does not like he does not appreciate your insolence. Yeah. Foolish American. So we're gonna kick off a segment here called Troy's Lie of the Week. And I have a fun little jingle here.
You're a lying sack of crap, just a lying sack of crap. Well, you're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid doo-doo.
Just the best jingle of all time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where did this jingle come from? Because it's amazing. That's what I need to
You're a
know.
lying sack of crap. Today's lie of the week is Tucker Carlson buying groceries in Russia. So you were just talking about the propaganda. This is one of the most blatant examples of pro-Putin propaganda. And by the way, I don't think Tucker's an asset. I think he's a full-on agent. I think he works for the Russians in some capacity, even though Vladimir Putin just fucking dog walked him on his show the other day.
Funniest thing ever.
But so he's in Russia to interview Vladimir Putin. He's spending his entire time in Russia talking about how much better Russia is than the United States. Moscow is cleaner, nicer. The subways are nicer in Moscow than they are in New York. By the way, Tokyo subways are beautiful. London subways are fine. Like, you don't have to be like a Russian autocracy to have clean subways, by the way.
They are famous for their subways, though. It's like
Who?
Moscow. It's like
Moscow,
Romanov era.
yeah.
Architecture.
But Tokyo subways are like outstanding.
Yeah, like the point is, it's not them. It's not Putin's to brag about. It's the fucking Romanovs, and they killed them. So
yeah,
just throwing that.
Well, I just say you could have a democracy and clean subways. They're not mutually exclusive.
Correct.
So another part of the Russia trip, he goes to buy groceries in Russia, and he's talking about his crew going in and buying groceries for the week for this Russia trip. And this is all on his show on X, by the way, because he's no longer on Fox. So he buys groceries for the week. It's a little setup. So this is a video from his show he posted. He's in a Russian grocery store talking about how groceries are cheaper in Russia than they are in the United States.
I went from amused to legitimately angry.
The Russian music in the background.
So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here. And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us. And coming to a Russian grocery store, the heart of evil, and seeing what things cost and how people live, it will radicalize you against our leaders. That's how I feel anyway, radicalized. We're not making any of this up, by the way.
We're not making this up, by the way.
Yeah, but you are Blanche. You are making it up. So he's radicalized against the United States, and he wants you to be radicalized against the United States leaders too, because apparently groceries are cheaper in Russia than they are in the United States. Just talking about how, just trying to make the point that leadership in Russia actually takes care of their people, and we should be outraged that our government hasn't done the same for us. So the groceries he purchased, so he's estimating that he bought for himself and his crew for the week, $400 worth of groceries that would have run $400 in the United States. Okay, so he gets the grocery bill. It's about 9,400 rubles, which is the equivalent of about $100. So he's making the point that groceries in Russia cost a quarter of what they do in the United States. The problem with this is that salaries are lower in Russia. We don't have equal salaries. The average monthly wage in Russia is about 73,000 rubles, which is the equivalent of about $800 a month in the United States. That comes out to 18,345 rubles per week for the average Russian, about $200 American. The average Russian makes about $200 a week. Based on the conversion rate. So Carlson's grocery bill of 9,400 rubles, that represents more than 50% of the average Russian's weekly salary. That's why, according to the Russian news agency TASS, Russia just happens to be experiencing a massive food supply crisis Food inflation is one of their most frequently referenced quality of life issues. Literally a food inflation crisis happening in Russia. TASS took a survey of 5,000 Russians aged 20 to 55. They found that 60%, 60.4% of Russians spend half their monthly income on food. 16% spend their entire earnings on food. And 14.8%, almost 15%, spend about a third of their income on food. So Carlson's attempt to crawl into bed with Vladimir Putin here by trying to say that groceries are cheaper in Russia is a blatant lie. It's just him shitting all over his audience who have now been repeating this for a week. Literally, there's a food inflation crisis going on in Russia. So,
well, that's the exact reason for the propaganda. Like when I watched this as an economics teacher, right, I lost my mind because he's taking advantage of people's Rocky's barking at the universe again. Sorry, people at home. But he's taking advantage of the fact that people don't really understand economics, especially when we start talking foreign exchange markets and currency values and stuff like that. Of course, you can get that much for American money. American money is worth a lot fucking more than Russian money. Notice the fact that 9,400 rubles was $100. That means that that's 9.4 cents on the dollar. So one American dollar is worth 940 rubles. Right? That's a bad exchange rate. That means that the value of American currency has a greater purchasing power than that of the ruble. So that is why it appears as though you could buy so much groceries in Russia for so little American money. Right, for so little American money, not so much Russian money. And the reason you can't buy it for Russian money is because poor countries have low wages. And low wages and rising prices create problems. It's called demand pull inflation. There's sanctions on the country. They can't get food trade into the country. That was one of the ways the Biden administration was attempting to put an end to the war. So if other countries can't do business with Russia and Russia's domestic supply is interrupted because they're sending so many people to war, that means the supply of necessary food for the economy doesn't meet the demand for food, meaning that the demand for food will push up the prices, thus creating the inevitable famine. We saw it with the same fucking thing happened with the Soviet Union, right? This is not new. And the reason Russians don't complain about it is because, one, it's generations that have been like this. It's sort of what it's like to live in Russia. And two, if you haven't noticed, people who complain end up dead in an Arctic prison. So I'd just buy potatoes and be quiet too.
The willful ignorance to suggest that food is more readily available in Russia, it's not even really Russia's fault. I mean, there's been sanctions on Russian food supply for decades, but it just the blatant. But the thing with Tucker is he knows this. He's a blatant propagandist. Yeah, you notice that little middle section where he's like, it starts to not matter. Corruption starts to not matter. Being a good person starts to not matter. What he's saying is that dictatorships are fine if you're able to afford groceries. That's exactly what he's saying. That's exactly the Putin mindset. That's exactly the authoritarian mindset. Who needs a good person? Who needs a clean democratic government if your groceries are too expensive? That's exactly the point he's trying to make here.
Failing to mention that the dictator can decide if you're allowed to have groceries whenever they want. It's like, no, we don't like you. You can't eat anymore. It's just dumb. And what I noticed that I don't think is getting the attention it deserves is notice how empty that shopping market was.
Yeah. By the way, it looks terrible. It looks awful in there.
Yeah.
It's bleak.
And it was empty, telling me that either this was a completely staged event, which would have shocked me. I don't know about you. But second, if it wasn't a staged event, nobody can afford food, Tucker, clearly, because nobody's there.
Yeah.
Nobody's there buying food because nobody has the money to buy food.
Yeah. If you look in the video too, you can see a lot of empty shelves behind him as well. The average Russian spending more than 50% of their weekly take home on food, on groceries.
And also, there's no universe where that cart of groceries they bought would cost $400.
Well, it's also based on the premise that he's just making up. He's just, just threw a nice round number out there.
It's this would cost $400 in America. No, it wasn't. You bought fucking cabbage. Cabbage is 60 cents a head for cabbage. The reason Americans complain about grocery prices is because the type of groceries they buy. You could buy fruits and vegetables a lot cheaper than you could buy fucking Cheetos and Mountain Dew. But guess what the people complaining about grocery prices are buying? It ain't fucking
Well, it
vegetables.
reminds me of those pictures of people buying like hot dogs and buns, and then there's also like some top shelf like liquor in the cart too. They're like, why the fuck are my hot dog and my buns so expensive? Because you also bought like incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
They
Like,
probably
I
loaded
saw
up on like Russian vodka too, which also ironically wouldn't be expensive in Russia.
I know. I saw one on Twitter like yesterday. It was like, this is $150 worth of groceries, and it's probably 3 meals. And it was a Red Baron pizza, 48 cans of Mountain Dew,
Jesus.
6 bags of potato chips, a bunch of like, kitty snacks for their lunch bags, and like 1 packet of like chicken.
Yeah.
And they're like, this will only feed my kids for 2 days. I'm like, that wouldn't feed anybody for any days because it's all fucking junk. It's like, had you not spent $40 on soda, like you might have been able to buy carrots. Who knew?
Blatant pro-Putin propaganda, working both ways, by the way, convincing Americans that they have it worse off than the Russians. But Russian state media gushes over Tucker Carlson all the time. He's their favorite sort of go-to for like, look at what the Americans are saying about us segments, which they run all the fucking time. They're fascinated with Americans, how Americans perceive them, but all they play is Tucker Carlson segments. So this is 100% designed to be picked up by Russian state media to be like, look, to then be recycled to the Russian public saying like, look, this is an American telling Americans that they have it worse off than us. So it's just it's a multi-layered propaganda psyop that that Tucker's engaged in here. And he's not even trying to hide anymore. I mean, he's just a blatant Russian, blatantly working for Putin. So
yeah, it's like not even an argument anymore. It's just, it's like he got fired from Fox, which is very telling. It's very telling. And then immediately wants to work on X with Elon Musk, who has, been a little bit helpful toward Vladimir Putin. Like, it just, you can see it all playing out together is what I'm getting at, and you have to kind of be intentionally ignoring it to not see it at this point.
So this has been Troy's Lie of the Week.
Woo! You're a lying sack of crap. Just a lying sack of crap. Well, you're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid doo-doo.
I can't believe you have a jingle.
I thought it was good. Should we talk some SneakerCon stuff? Some news that Kathy missed?
Listen, news Kathy missed this week. And I'm desperate to hear about the latest grift because, boy, oh boy, does this one sound funny.
So Trump is trying to hawk sneakers. He has like solid gold shoes. He's trying to sell for like $400.
Wait, are they actually gold or are they just like colored gold?
No, I'm sure they just look that way. I don't know. They're probably made in China. Who knows?
Doubt it.
They're Trump shoes. He's trying to get back into the like Trump brand shit, which by the way, every single like Trump steaks, Trump vodka, the Trump modeling agency, which I think a lot of people forgot about.
Yeah, was famous down here for a while.
But now he's got Trump shoes. So he shows up at SneakerCon, which apparently is a thing, to a surprise appearance at SneakerCon, and that's important. We'll talk a little bit later about why that is important. But he was booed. He was booed at SneakerCon trying to hawk his latest grift, these golden $300 shoes. Here's another video. This is Donald Trump coming to the stage surprisingly at SneakerCon. And he gets about a 50-50 response. He starts to get booed, so they start turning up the music so you can't hear people booing. So you can see in the background, there's a Trump shoes. So I guess this was like a Trump shoes exhibit at SneakerCon. They had a bunch of people that were there to see the unveiling of the Trump shoe, and Trump made like a surprise drop-in appearance at this event at SneakerCon, getting booed by a sizable chunk. There was also a woman who just went absolutely fucking apeshit. Trump invited her on stage. Just the creepiest culty shit I've ever seen in my life. She was crying, hugging him, like couldn't let him go. So he let her talk into the mic for about a minute and a half, talking about what a great man and a great father and husband he was and stuff like that. So anyway, it's just creepy shit.
Meanwhile, his wife is missing in action. Sorry, his third wife is missing in action.
Yeah. So what this really reveals, Kathy, is the importance of Trump's advance team. So I think, I don't think people appreciate how successful Trump's advance team politics have been. And it's run by Jason Miller, by the way, who does not get enough credit for how skillful he is at this. Every single time you see Trump arrive at an event or walk into a football game or even just Trump rallies, and he's just surrounded by adoring fans, that's his advance team showing up hours before, picking people out of a crowd that are the most adoring Trump people on the planet and just lining the walkway with those people so that all you see is Trump getting adored and loved and all this stuff as he's going anywhere. It's been a huge part of his image. It's the reason why the media doesn't treat him like he should be treated, which is just an absolute fucking scumbag. He's managed to maintain this air of legitimacy about him. And that's all, again, it comes back down to propaganda. It's all what they're showing you. It's all fake. It's all staged. But when you show up to a surprise event and your advance team hasn't had a chance to clean out all the riffraff, you're going to actually start to see some of the general public's feelings about Trump start to sneak in there. So it's pretty interesting.
It's why I think he didn't spend as much time at the Iowa State Fair as other candidates as well, because all the Republican candidates were there, but it's not like only Republicans go to the fair. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like regular Iowans going to the fair probably don't care about Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis because they're all aware that they're not doing anything this year. But they would have something to say, I think, about Donald Trump, So I think it was wise that he avoided that in large part. But I also, like, all of the obvious, like, that part aside, well, no, first, before I say that, like, I've worked campaigns. It's really easy to make it look like they're more popular than they are. You find a bunch of, like, overeager kids, and you're like, you want a fucking sign? Go stand over there and promise me you'll wave it. And they, like, free shit, tell me to, like, whatever. They do it all the time. It's not that hard to do. But it's very easy to fuck up, and that was a fuck up, right? And, I need to see more of those fuck ups. But I find it interesting that this happens the same week he gets ordered to pay millions of dollars. And if he's not allowed to do New York or business in New York, does that mean he can't sell his sneakers there? Like, how does that work? I want to know. Like, Trump sneakers are banned in New York? Because that's funny.
The responses
for you, Donnie.
The responses on Black Twitter, which is a thing. There's Black Twitter.
Black Twitter is the most amazing thing in the world. There's as funny as Black Twitter is Irish Twitter, and that makes sense if you think about it, like, culturally.
Yeah, Irish Twitter is pretty astounding too. I want to pull up some of these responses if I could find them. Just funny names for the shoes, like calling them the air surrectionists, and like the
now that is funny.
The Trump coup shoe. There's a bunch of them. The reason why, but yeah, Trump's advance team has been stellar. The reason why DeSantis's campaign fell apart, honestly, is because he had zero advance team. You would see DeSantis show up to places like the fair, barely anyone there to see him. People ignoring him. No one gives a shit. That's all just his team not prepping not prepping for his arrivals.
I would say he barely had a team prepping him at all, because no campaign team would have let him wear those fucking boots. Like, if you need lifts in your shoes, there's better ways to go about it than the boots. Like, you live in Florida. Literally nobody wears cowboy boots in Florida unless they're going to Cowboys to line dance on Saturday, but that's a different story. Like, there's no practical reason to own cowboy boots in Florida. And it just looks stupid to wear, like, a suit with cowboy boots. Like, who are you, Rick Perry? Like, it wasn't fun when he did it either.
Well, he's not a great candidate, but he was not helped by the fact that his campaign team didn't have any fucking idea what they were doing.
They're as delusional as him. Like, just
here we go. Those treason air ones, the January 6s.
January 6th.
Let's see. There's some indictment ones, lie tops, Jim Crow ones.
Oh no, that's so good.
Fresh pair of 6s, Air Force nuns. So just really funny
I
shit.
love Black Twitter. It's the best thing in the world.
I like Airsurrectionists. That's pretty funny.
That is really good. I like that one.
So you mentioned the judgment. So we got
Yeah.
the judgment, massive judgment, finally dropping in the Trump civil case in New York. 11-week trial of Trump Organization, where New York Attorney General Letitia James alleged that Donald Trump had engaged in a pattern of fraudulent business practices over the course of many years. Judge Engoron, it was a pre-trial decision, by the way. He was found guilty of it. The trial was about how much he was going to have to pay. It's called disgorgement. The trial was just about how much he owed. This was the trial where they neglected to check the box for a jury. So he was stuck with a bench trial, which is just the judge deciding how much he owes.
Which I'm kind of happy with, frankly, because
So Judge Engoron in New York ordered Trump to pay $364 million in total fines, banned Trump from running a business or any legal entity in the state of New York for 3 years, which was low, by the way. I was hoping that would be like a permanent ban. But to say you can't do business in New York for 3 years is pretty devastating when that's like the headquarters of your operation.
Yeah, 3 years might be enough. He's an old man. You know?
Yeah. With interest, it comes out to over $450 million that Trump, Don Jr., and Eric Trump and some of their former executives will owe. So massive judgment. This was the trial where they tried to defame the judge's clerk. You know, we're spreading rumors about her all over the internet. They constantly called him. They tried to damage the judge's reputation. They called him a lefty, a Marxist, corrupt. So it turns out if you personally attack the judge in a bench trial where the judge alone gets to decide how much you owe in fines, it's probably not a great idea.
Sort of like when you're rude to your wait staff and you're wondering why your food tastes like spit.
Yeah. So there was that. Fonnie Willis disqualification hearings in Georgia. We're just about out of time here. Fonnie Willis disqualification hearings in Georgia. Racist, misogynist shit show, man.
Gross.
Holy hell. There's just some nasty racism going on there.
I like that she called them out. Like, you seem to forget I'm not the one on trial here. Like,
so your office objected to us getting Delta records for flights that you may have taken with Mr. Wade.
Well, no. Look, I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
So my question was.
So yeah, get them.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
They suck. But from what I understand, Trump's lawyer in that one looks just as stupid as Trump's lawyer in the New York one looked.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's pretty bad.
He's really good at picking legal staff.
Well, his one in New York was Alina Habba, who is a real estate lawyer from Florida. It's picked entirely because she's attractive and does well on TV. She has absolutely no idea. She's not a trial.
Does well on TV.
She's not a trial attorney at all. The judge had to explain to her how objections work, how entering evidence works. She had absolutely no idea. So it was just embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing.
I know I saw a clip of her like doing a podcast interview or somewhere or something, but they said, would you rather, or if you asked me, would I rather be smart or pretty? I'd be pretty. I can fake being smart. I'm like, can you though, honey? Can you? Because no, you can't.
No, you really can't. Barely. No, you really can't. Yeah. So this
she's
Georgia,
pretty, but she's not like, knock you over like.
She's the type of woman that Trump would find attractive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but she's just like, she's basic pretty. She's just like your run of the mill pretty. There's nothing spectacular about her. Like, she's not an unattractive girl, but she's not like
she's skinny with huge boobs. Like, that's the only.
Yeah, like,
let's just say it. Like, that's the only thing.
Especially here in Florida, she is literally a dime a dozen. Like,
right.
And that is just every vapid bitch on the beach.
He doesn't want lawyers that are good. He wants lawyers that know how to, that can play well on TV. And she is a good interview, like on Fox News. That's all she's good at. But this Fonnie Willis thing, so they're trying to
not all she's good at.
Well, yeah. So this Fonnie Willis thing, so they're trying to disqualify. She is the district attorney, by the way, the elected district attorney. They're trying to disqualify her from the case in Fulton County, Georgia, over election tampering, because she boned a coworker. Like, she fucked her coworker. And they're trying to say that somehow that makes her that shows like bias in the case. I have absolutely no idea how. I
don't know how they make that connection. Like, in what world does that mean he's gonna be unfair to Donald Trump? Like, I don't get it.
They're just trying to drag her through the mud. There's no way that the judge shouldn't have even heard this objection.
But had he not, what the MAGAs would have done.
Yeah.
So.
It's got absolutely no relevance to the case whatsoever, which she said in that clip. Like, she's not like this is not the Fani Willis trial. They tried to put her on trial. They dug up every aspect of her life. They got her father on the stand because Fani Willis testified that she keeps cash in her home. They were trying to make a big deal about her like having hordes of cash in her house as if that proves she's corrupt. They got her father on the stand who was like, that's what black people do, because historically, we weren't allowed to use credit cards. So we have like emergency cash stored in our house.
Yeah.
But it's just a racist, misogynist.
It's a generational thing too. I know a lot of old ladies growing up in Boca that just had like socks filled with money in various drawers throughout the house, right?
Well, Jewish people do that too, because they're they're so used to having to flee and they're taught generation to generation to keep security cash on hand. So are black people.
Yeah, and women in general are,
and
because
women.
only the last 50 years or so could we have bank accounts. So everybody's mother and grandmother, I'm sure, has just piles of cash hidden in various cookie tins throughout their house. Not that I found a cookie tin filled with cash one day that my grandmother told me to put away or anything. Sorry, Nana, I didn't mean to tell your secrets.
So anyway, it's not going to go anywhere. I would be astonished if the judge disqualifies the district attorney over something like this from hearing the case. Yeah. It's just designed to drag her through the mud and embarrass her and just feed to that racist dog whistle about her, about two black people having sex as if white people don't have sex.
The scandal of it all.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, it's par for the course with that crowd, though. Let's be real.
Yeah. We are just about out of time. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of Just Buy Less Coffee. If you're not subscribed to Patreon, head on over there, patreon.com/Just Buy Less Coffee. Subscribe, $5 a month, get access to behind the scenes content, more exclusive interview content coming to Patreon, our deep dive series. We are going to continue our deep dive series this week. Only Patreon subscribers get access to that. Also some subscriber only events, subscriber only Q&As. Kathy and I are going to have a little like personal download, get to know us a little bit more, stuff like that. So if you want a little bit more from us, you like us for some reason, head on over to Patreon, subscribe. Very, very cheap to get additional access to some additional content. If you're listening on the audio only versions, make sure you're clicking that download button. Downloads help us out in terms of our rankings with other podcasts. Also doesn't cost you anything. Check out the video content on YouTube. Head on over to YouTube channel, Just Buy Less Coffee. We have our most recent episodes up over there. You can watch the video content of the show. Kathy, I am so glad that you are alive. And yeah.
And I'm about to tell you a story about how I almost died before on a plane too.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I almost die a lot. Just for the record, there's a lot of those stories. It's unfortunate.
Don't die on us, Kathy. You're the fan favorite here, so we need you on the show.
I think I'm on like guardian angel number 7. They all get early retirement and like a really nice penthouse apartment, I think, because I have made them work for it.
Well, we love you, Kathy. Don't go on us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. We love you guys so much. Thank you for supporting us. And we will see everybody next time. You've been listening to Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics, featuring Troy Matthews at Keep Troy Blue and Kathy Cannon at Cannon's Fodder. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X. All opinions are our own.